Hello everybody, welcome back to Princeton Storytime, my channel. It's been a long time since I've filmed a video. I've been very busy, sorry about that. But today we're going to pick up from where we have left off, which is Karlson Flies Again. Now if you remember, it's about a little boy and his friend Karlson who lives on the roof. And last time they were having some fun with Karlson and with the last chapter was called Karlson on the Box. So if you haven't seen that one, go watch that one and come back to this. So today is chapter 6 and it's called Karlson's Ingenious Bell. The next morning, Seb and Sally both woke up with a strange red rash on their bodies. Scarlet fever, said Miss Crawley, once she had inspected them. The doctor she sent for said the same thing. Scarlet fever, off to the hospital for observation. The pair of you right away. Then he pointed at Smidge. And this one's to be kept in quarantine until further notice. Smidge started crying when he heard that. He didn't want to be kept in quarantine. Not that he knew what it meant, but it sounded horrible. It's no big deal, said Seb. It only means you'll get out of going to school and you won't be able to have any other children around you. Because you might be infectious, see? Sally, his sister, was lying in bed with tears in her eyes. Poor Smidge, she said. You're going to be very lonely. Maybe we should call Mum. But Miss Crawley wouldn't hear of it. Certainly not. Mrs. Stevenson needs her peace and quiet. Remember, she's ill as well. I shall look after that young man. She nodded in the direction of Smidge, who was standing by Sally's bed, his eyes all red from crying. There wasn't time to say much more because the ambulance came to pick up Seb and Sally, Smidge's brother and sister. Smidge started crying again because although his brother and sister made him very cross sometimes, he did like them a lot, and it was such a shame they had to go to the hospital. Bye then, Smidge, said Seb, as the ambulance men carted him off. Goodbye, little brother, and don't be sad. We'll be home soon, you'll see, said Sally. Smidge howled. That's what you say. What if you both die? Miss Crawley told him off afterwards. How could he be so stupid to think people died of scarlet fever? Smidge went to his room. Bumble was waiting for him, and he scooped his dog up in his arms. Now I've only got you, said Smidge, hugging Bumble. And Karlson, of course. Bumble certainly seemed to understand that Smidge was upset. He licked his face. It was just as if he was trying to say, Yes, but at least you have got me, and Karlson. Smidge sat there for a long time, thinking how wonderful it was to have Bumble. But he was really missing Mum, even so. He remembered he had promised to write to her, and decided to do it straight away. Dear Mum, he wrote, this family is breaking up completely. Seb and Sally have got scarlet fever and are in the hospital, and I am in quarantine. It doesn't hurt, but I bet I'll get scarlet fever as well, and Dad is in London if he is alive at all. But I haven't heard he is ill, but I bet he is because all the others are. I really miss you. How are you anyway? Are you doing well? There's a thing about Karlson I ought to tell you, but I won't because you will only worry, and you need peace and quiet, said Creepy Crawley. She isn't ill, and neither is Karlson, though I bet they soon will be. Goodbye, dear Mum. Rest in peace. I won't write any more, Smidge told Bumble, because I don't want to scare her after all. Then he ran over to the window and rang for Karlson. Yes, rang. Called him. Karlson had done something very clever the evening before, you see. He had rigged up a bell system between his house on the roof and Smidge's room down below. You can't go out haunting just on the off chance, said Karlson. But Karlson was now wired up the world's best bell, so you can ring and order a haunting whenever Creepy Crawley sits herself down in some suitable spot and starts looking out into the night for scary little me. The system consisted of a cowbell fixed under the ridge of Karlson's roof and a piece of string running from the cowbell down to Smidge's window. You pull the string, said Karlson, and the bell rings up at my place, and hey, presto, in flies your neighborhood ghost and Creepy Crawly has a fit. Isn't that marvelous? Of course it was marvelous, and Smidge thought so too, but not just for haunting. Until now he had to sit and wait until Karlson felt like dropping in. Now he could ring for him whenever he needed to talk to him, and Smidge really did feel he needed to talk to Karlson right now. He tugged and yanked at the string, and could hear the cowbell jangling away on the roof. Soon he heard the whir of Karlson's motor, too. But the Karlson who came flying in at the window looked in rather a bad mood, and as if he had just woken up. Think this is meant for some sort of alarm clock, he said peevishly. Oh, sorry, said Smidge. Were you asleep? You should have asked me that before you woke me up. You always sleep like a baby, you do, and you've no idea what it's like for us poor souls who hardly ever get a wink of sleep. When we do finally doze off, I think we might expect our friends to keep ever so totally quiet and hold their breaths instead of clanging bells as if there were a fire. Do you have trouble sleeping then? Said Smidge. Karlson nodded morosely. Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. Smidge was sorry to hear it. You poor thing. Do you really sleep badly? Lousily, said Karlson. That's to say, I sleep like a log at nights, and in the mornings, but it's the afternoons that are the worst. I just lie there tossing and turning. He stood quietly for a minute, as if brooding about his sleep troubles. But then he looked eagerly around the room. If someone gave me a little present, then I might not be quite so fed up that you woke me up. Smidge didn't want Karlson to be fed up, so he started hunting among his things. My mouth organ, would you like that? Karlson snatched the mouth organ. Oh, yes, thanks, I've always wanted a musical instrument. I'll have this. Unless you happen to have a double bass, that is. He put the mouth organ to his mouth and blew a few awful-sounding notes. He looked at Smidge and his eyes twinkled. Hear that? I've made up a nice, sad tune already. I call it The Neighborhood Ghost's Lament. Smidge said sad tunes were just right for this house full of ill people, and he told Karlson all about the scarlet fever. Isn't it a shame for Seb and Sally, he said. But Karlson said scarlet fever was a mere trifle and nothing to worry about. As a matter of fact, it was rather handy having Seb and Sally away in hospital. Now the big haunting was about to start. No sooner had he said it than Smidge jumped with fright. He could hear Miss Crawley's steps outside the room, and knew she would be barging into his room any second. Karlson could see he had to do something quickly, too. He came in to land with a splat, and rolled under Smidge's bed like a little ball. Smidge hastily sat down on the bed, and spread his dressing gown over his knees, so it would hang down and hide as much of Karlson as possible. That moment, the door opened and Miss Crawley stalked in with a dustpan and a broom. I'm going to clean up in here, she said. You wait in the kitchen in the meantime. Smidge felt so nervous that he began to sweat. No, I don't want to, he said. I'm supposed to stay here and be in quarantine. Miss Crawley glared at him, annoyed. Do you know what you've got under your bed? She asked. Smidge went red in the face. Had she spotted Karlson? There isn't anything under my bed, he stammered. Oh, yes there is, said Miss Crawley. There's a huge accumulation of fluff that I'm going to sweep up. Now move. Smidge was beside himself. No, I'm supposed to stay here and be in quarantine, he cried. So Miss Crawley, muttering, started to sweep the other end of the room. Well, sit there then, if you must, until I've finished over here. But then you'll have to be so kind as to be in quarantine, in some other corner of the room. Stubborn brat. Smidge chewed his nails and wondered how this was going to turn out. Then he gave a sudden start and began to giggle. Karlson was tickling the back of his knee, and Smidge was so ticklish. Miss Crawley glowered at him. Hark at your laughing, when your mother and brother and sister are all sick and suffering. Some people get over things very quickly, it seems to me. Again, Smidge felt Karlson tickling the back of his knee, and this time he had such a violent fit of laughter that he almost fell off the bed. "May I ask you what's so funny?" asked Miss Crawley tartly. "He," said Smidge. "I've just remembered a joke." He racked his brains to think of a joke quickly. "It's that one about the bull who charged at the horse, and the horse was so scared that he had to climb a tree. Have you heard it, Miss Crawley?" Seb used to tell that joke sometimes, but Smidge had never laughed at it, because he felt so sorry for the poor horse having to climb a tree. Miss Crawley wasn't laughing either. "That's enough of your silly jokes. You know very well that horses can't climb trees." "No, they can't," said Smidge, just like Seb usually did. But after all, he had an angry bull after him. So what the hell was he supposed to do? Seb had said you were allowed to say hell when you were telling a joke, but that the word hell was not right to use. Miss Crawley didn't agree. She looked disgustedly at Smidge. "You sit here laughing and swearing, with your mother and brother and sister sick and suffering. I must say I'm staggered." She was interrupted right there. From under the bed came the sound of the neighborhood ghost's lament. Just a few short, piercing notes from the instrument, but enough to make Miss Crawley jump. "What on earth was that?" "I don't know," said Smidge. But Miss Crawley knew. Oh, yes. Those were sounds from another world. I'm absolutely sure of it. "From another world? What does that mean?" Smidge asked. "From the world of ghosts," said Miss Crawley. "The only ones in this room are you and me, and neither of us can make sounds like that. That wasn't a human cry, it was a ghost's cry. Didn't you hear it? It sounded like a soul in distress." She stared at Smidge, wide-eyed. Lordy, I simply must write to the television people now." She threw down her dustpan and broom and sat herself at Smidge's desk. She found some paper and a pen. She wrote away busily for a long time. Then she read it all out to Smidge. "Now just you listen to this. To the Swedish Radio and Television. My sister Frida Crawley was in your series about spirits and ghosts. I don't think it was a very good program, whatever Frida says. You need to do better than that, and here's a chance for you to do it, because I have ended up living in a real haunted house, and here's a list of all the hauntings I've had. Strange mooing outside of the window, and it can't have been a cow because we live on the 4th floor. It was just a sort of mooing. Things vanishing mysteriously, such as buns and little boys locked in rooms. 3. Doors that get locked from the outside while I'm inside. Explain that if you can. 4. Ghastly ghost writing on the kitchen wall. 5. Sudden funeral music when I was cleaning. Somehow made you want to cry. Come at once because this will be really a good program to get people talking. Yours sincerely, Hilda Kroll. P.S. Whatever gave you the idea of putting Frida on TV of all people? Then Miss Crawley, quite carried away, dashed out to post her letter. Smidge peered down at Karlson. He was lying there under the bed with that glint in his eyes and came wriggling out as bright and cheerful as he could. Whoop whoop, he went. Just wait until it gets dark this evening. Miss Crawley is going to get something really worth writing to that television crowd about. Smidge started to giggle again and gave Karlson an affectionate look. It's fun being in quarantine as long as I can be in quarantine with you, Smidge said. He thought for a minute about Chris and Jemima, who he usually played with. He ought really to be feeling sad that he wouldn't be able to see them for quite a long time. But it doesn't matter. It's more exciting playing with Karlson anyway, thought Smidge. Only just now, Karlson hadn't got time to play anymore. He'd got to get home and mend his silencer, he said. We can't have the neighborhood ghost flying in like a clattering dustbin, you know. Nope. It's got to be weird and silent and spooky enough to make Creepy Crawley's hair stand on end. Then Karlson and Smidge decided on a special system of signals for their bell on a string. If you ring once, said Karlson, it means come straight away. And if you ring twice, it means don't come whatever you do. And 3 times means just imagine there's being somebody in the world as handsome and perfectly plump and brave and great in every way as you, Karlson. Why would I want you to ring to say that? Asked Smidge. Well, because it's important to say kind and encouraging things to your friends every 5 minutes or so, and I can't be popping down here that often, you know? Smidge gave Karlson a thoughtful look. I'm your friend too, aren't I? But I don't think you ever say anything like that to me. Then Karlson laughed. But that's different, obviously. You're just a silly little boy. Smidge nodded. He knew Karlson was right. But you do like me, don't you? Yes, of course, Karlson assured him. I don't quite know why I do, and I often brood about it when I'm lying there in the afternoons, not getting to sleep. He patted Smidge on the cheek. Certainly I like you, and there must be some reason for it, maybe it's because you're so different from me, poor little chap. He flew up to the open window and waved goodbye. And if you ring wildly, as if there's a fire, he said, it means either there is a fire, or now I've gone and woken you again, dear Karlson. So bring a big bag and come and fetch all my toys. You can have them all as my way of saying sorry. And Karlson was gone. But Bumble leapt onto the floor in front of Smidge and thumped his tail on the rug. It was his way of showing he really liked someone and wanted them to care about him. Smidge lay down on the floor beside him. That made Bumble jump up and bark with joy. Then he nestled up against Smidge's arm and shut his eyes. At least you think it's a good thing that I'm off school and in quarantine, said Smidge. Bumble, you think I'm the world's best boy, don't you, boy? And that is, that's the end of chapter 6 for today. I hope you enjoyed, and again, I'll be reading almost every day from now on. I just took a long break, but now I'm back to be reading. We've got a few chapters left, and I've got a really nice surprise readings to come after we finish this book. I think there's about 4 or 5 chapters, perhaps, maybe less. So I hope you enjoyed today's reading, and tune in for the next one, which is going to be about ghosts, the neighborhood ghost. All right, thank you very much.